Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. The Sixers lose Game 4 in Toronto, and now the series is 3-1. Am I panicking? Absolutely not. It's extremely difficult to sweep an NBA team in a 4-game series. And then factor in that as much as we've ripped apart the Raptors over the last 3 games when the Sixers handled business, they're not the Orlando Magic. They're not the Indiana Pacers. Those teams the Sixers lose to in regular season action. Not that there's a correlation between regular season and the postseason, but it just shows you where it's very hard to win 4 games in a row, even when you're playing against regular season opponents who are abysmal. Factor in a squad that has some heart, that plays tough, that has an edge, that, don't want to get swept, and they're on their home floor, so they had their crowd behind them, and it is what it is. I see the Sixers closing this thing out in 5 in South Philadelphia and accomplishing their goal. There's obviously a new little angle to everything, which is Joel Embiid's injury. Now, before I hear anything about Joel Embiid and his health, this isn't a Joel Embiid problem. This is called the nature of sports. Fred VanVleet had to leave the game. He was definitely injured. You look at Chris Middleton in the Milwaukee Bucks. You look at Devin Booker in the Phoenix Suns. This is what it's like when you put a lot of miles on your body throughout a regular season and then you get into the postseason. You're going to be extremely banged up. Now, it just stings because it seems like every year it's something, whether it's a torn meniscus that he's battling through or Markelle Fultz ends up hitting him in the eyes and he has that situation where he's wearing the phantom mask, that black mask over his face. Just seems like every year Joel is forced to handle some adversity, but this is what it's going to be. And before I saw the game, I was a little less nervous about the thumb. Then I watched him play. Now, here's the thing. I need to see Game 5 because this could just be a bad basketball game for the Sixers. One squad has their back against the wall. They know that they're desperate and they have their home crowd in front of them. If Joel balls and hits some of the shots that I saw him make in that third quarter and in the second half, not that this was anything outrageous by the Sixers, because other than Tobias Harris, no one really stood out to me. Maybe a Paul Reed 3 and a Paul Reed basket where he had a nice little move to get to the rim. Other than that, nothing really stood out to me in a positive light. So if they handle business in Game 5 and win, and it looks like it did in those first 2 games, well, then I'm really not going to have as much feelings in a negative way about the thumb. Maybe that's what today was. Maybe today, even with the good thumb, would just be a bad Joel Embiid night because you saw the way that the Toronto Raptors played. He had a little bit more trouble when it comes to the double teams and the blitzing and the passing and things of that nature. And I'm not going to downplay the fact that there is a thumb injury. Maybe that did play a role. I'm not saying it did or didn't. I mean, it clearly seems to be definitely giving him some sort of trouble, and he's shaking it out all the time. So I'm going to lean towards that is bothering him, but I don't know if just because it's bothering him, that necessarily means that every game you're going to get this style of play, because they can easily come out on Monday night, just explode, win the game easily or win the game in general, and we have a different tone about things. Look, the Raptors fans are already trying to convince themselves, well, if they squeeze one out in Philly and they come back for Game 6, we can make this a series. Don't get too emotionally tied just from one outcome. It is so hard to beat a team. The Milwaukee Bucks, look at that series and how it's playing out. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks, you look at the score at one point the other day, and it was like 74-44 or something along those lines. But I'm just saying, the New Orleans Pelicans, these teams win games against other squads that are significantly better than them. To say they didn't sweep, it is what it is. They have a lot of heart. They showed a lot of fight, and I'm not surprised. The Washington Wizards last year, who stink, by the way, they ended up taking one from the Sixers. It's just reality of the beast. So do what you need to do. Hit that refresh button, and we can bitch and complain all we want about the bad referees today. And my Lord, they were awful. That was one of the worst performances. Nick Nurse, He's getting what he wants. He's very vocal. And then in Toronto, it's obvious that he got what he was trying to do by being annoying and complaining all the time. But that's not why the Sixers lost this game. They played bad. They did not play well. Tyrese Maxey looked overwhelmed. Embiid obviously wasn't executing at the clip we need him to. I thought with Harden, he had spurts where he tried to keep you involved. At the same time, not the sharpest by any means. Here's the ball at the three-point line, catch and shoot compared to putting the ball on the floor. At times, that showed its ugly head. Really, the only positive for me was Tobias. And holy hell, have we seen some tricks in his bag that I didn't even know he had. Coast-to-coast layup, that two-handed jam where he was soaring in the air. The time he spent attacking the rim lately, I'm stunned in disbelief on how outrageously solid Tobias Harris has been. I could have never dreamed in a billion years it would be this successful. And realistically, I've leaned more towards being a optimism guy. An optimist is the word I'm looking for when it comes to Tobias Harris more than most. And even I couldn't have envisioned it being this much of a 180 when it comes to Tobias Harris and his play. So no reason to hit the panic button. This happens. Thad Young grabbed some offensive boards. So you think about what was going to be a hard problem for the Sixers in any playoff series. Well, we've seen teams get second chance opportunities all the time on them throughout the regular season. And it felt like Thad Young with those O boards and the O boards in general really hurt you. Points off of turnovers, daggers, and the Raptors just got that surge. They got that push from the crowd, and it really did give them that momentum to run away with things at times. But it's crazy, right? Because in Game 3, they were down 17, they were down 10, and it still felt like the Sixers were there. This game, I thought the Sixers played significantly worse, and I looked down at the score, and it's a 5-point game. What? It's a 5-point game? It almost felt like we were having deja vu, and it would play out the same way. So I'm just saying, if I'm the Raptors, right, and they eventually ended up separating themselves later in that second half. But it was there for the taking for the Sixers. And if you think about how many players for Philadelphia were awful, atrocious, really disturbingly bad. And all those turnovers and all those offensive boards that the Raptors grabbed, and it was still at one point a reasonable 5-point game. You know, it just goes back to, all right, so they snagged one. So they took one. Gentlemen sweep it is. So close the door. Don't let this thing linger. Close the door. Would have been fantastic knowing Joel Embiid's health to win it Saturday afternoon and just say, screw it, what's next? But I can't hide from the fact that it's really, really, really hard to play the same team 4 times in a row and just dominate them and win every single time, especially with a team that does have that type of attitude to them, which is, look, we may go down, but we're going down swinging. And I respect that out of Toronto. I knew they weren't going to lay down and die. Some teams may. Some teams are that bad. Some squads, and they're really not 5 seeds normally, because keep in mind, this is a 4-5 matchup, although you think of 2, 3, 4. There wasn't much separation here, okay? When you look at the regular season standings between the Sixers being in 4 and the Sixers being in 2. But when you see an 8th seed or something along those lines, those squads might recognize early in a series, we're toast, and we're just absolutely going to get annihilated from this point moving forward. So they do lay down and go, I don't want any more. They wave the white flag, but the Raptors were never going to do that. And it's hard to put away a team because they know we have nothing left in the tank here. We have to put everything out there because one more loss and we're hitting the golf course. I don't think the Raptors, though, have that same extra layer to them when you're in a different building, in a different environment. And that's why I'm anticipating a whole different vibe to the action when we see the game go down on Monday night. Danny Green took 7 threes, only made 2. He was 2 for 10 from the field. Maxey had a clunker. Niang, offensively, I'll give him a check mark for some positivity with those threes. But defensively, holy hell, talk about moving in quicksand. I thought he had some really awful defensive possessions where he was getting waxed and he was getting toasted. And keep in mind, this isn't an excuse, but I'm just laying it out there. You were down in Matisse Thybulle. Now, I know Matisse Thybulle hurts you offensively due to the lack of spacing, but he could have helped when it came to stopping one of their defensive players. Pascal Siakam finally showed up, and he's been getting criticized. He's been getting ridiculed by the Toronto media because, well, let's be realistic. He has stunk, and he hasn't provided what they anticipated. But to be fair, I also feel that Toronto thinks way highly, way more intense of a Pascal Siakam. They give him more credit than is probably reasonable. Like, he's a good player. People act as if he's way better than he is, and then sometimes you put that bar too high for expectations, where there were clueless Toronto Raptors fans before the series began that said Pascal Siakam and Joel Embiid basically match each other out, and it's a wash, and from there it's going to be other players. Are you delusional? I don't know what type of cocaine is up there in Toronto, what type of cannabis is up there in Toronto. I don't know what people are putting in your Timmy Hortons, but that's absolutely absurd if anybody truly feels that way. He did have 34 points, though. Welcome to the series, Pascal Siakam. It took you some time. Tobias Harris was working you and putting you in hell and making it difficult for you. You answered the bell today. Well, that's what happens when desperation settles in. But at some point, the Sixers are going to play better than they did. I can't believe this game was for the taking with how ugly it was. So I'll complain just like Joel Embiid did afterwards and give some golf claps towards the refs that clearly, it's funny. Raptors fans claim that the NBA wanted the Sixers to win so badly, which is just a foolish way of thinking. But when you talk about a 3-0 series and trying to snag a fifth game in there, yeah, I'm not surprised that the NBA was, hey, let's see if we can get one back to Philadelphia and get another game. That is more realistic for sure, but that's not the reason why they lost. I mean, I thought that they played a horrible brand of basketball. Everybody was out of sync, except once again, I just want to keep referencing this, except for Tobias. I know the fear is totally involved with Joel Embiid and his thumb. I was getting to this point earlier and I got a bit sidetracked. Crazy, shocking, I know. But when you think about Joel, before the game, I wasn't as in depth with the thought. I didn't think it would be as brutal as what I saw today when shaking it and things of that nature. With that said, though, if they win and he has 30-something points in Game 5 and they're in cruise control in a victory, I think that feeling about his thumb can still be there, but it could diminish a bit based off of where some of the fan base is right now. We know he's going to get an MRI. I'm not saying you shouldn't be nervous at all, but I just need more information, and another game will tell me more. He's going to be battling discomfort. He's going to be battling pain, but that doesn't mean, because I saw some buckets in there where 3 guys are on him. It's a mid-range jumper. He's fading to his left, and he's still drilling it. I thought what happened was they got so frustrated and so bothered by how the game was being called that it forced the Sixers. They allowed the refs to get in their head, and that forced the Sixers to play an uncomfortable brand, which we've seen before, right? We've seen in the past in the regular season of James Harden looking around with his hands up. We've seen Joel Embiid looking around with his hands up. We've seen Doc Rivers putting his hands up too, somewhat waving to the air as if I can't take this anymore. Forget about it. You guys are trash. So it just seemed like that energy surrounding the team dictated the way that they played. But even through some double teams and hell, even triple team, Embiid still made some significant tough jumpers, even with the thumb. So if it's a different day where you get shots off and they just execute at a higher clip, will we feel the same way about the thumb? I think it's a fair question to ask. And maybe the answer is, maybe after Game 5, I'm sitting right in this chair and we say, all right, it looks like we got more information and we didn't like the data that we received. I'm not ruling that out by any means. But I would like to have more. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I would like to have some more. Now, there was one frame that I loved even through this adversity. And when Embiid went to the bench and he put his arms around Harden, he put his arms around Maxey, and he had a smile. This thing's over in 5. This thing's over in 5. That's Joel Embiid acknowledging. All right, fellas, we're good. It's 3-1. I like the position we're in. We'll do it. I didn't love Joel Embiid lowering his shoulder and going into Pascal Siakam as if Howie Roseman had his binoculars looking for a linebacker. It got chippy, it got hostile, and I think that's what the Raptors wanted to do because they're desperate. So if we get into their heads and we make them play out of whack and we make sure that they're definitely upset, we can take them out of their element. That's what they wanted, and it worked. Game plan worked today. But I think the Sixers are going to realize that, and then their demeanor and everything that the Raptors are going to try to suck them into, which is extremely harder to do when you're not in your own building, where the rise of the crowd can make it happen even easier, where now the Sixers fans are on the Sixers side, and that definitely changes the pulse of everything. So if you snag one with that mentality and that approach strategy-wise in your own building, okay, that can work. We saw it. It worked. But I don't think it has the same effective level. The effectiveness of it, it definitely is different and changes when you're the Raptors and you're playing in Philadelphia compared to the alternative. 856-442-9805 is the phone number. I want to hear from you on what you thought about this game and your feelings on Embiid and your feelings on Game 5 and if you're overreacting to this one or not. 856-442-9805. We'll start things off with Sean. What's up, Sean?
What's going on, Hunter? How you doing?
Living the dream. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Hey, listen, you pretty much covered everything with this one that I was going to say, but, you know, this was a game that the Sixers just were lethargic. I mean, they played as if they were already on holiday. They were a step late to every loose ball. They didn't get too many rebounds. Offensively, they were stagnant. But I look at it this way. Look, even in victory, I saw Fred VanVleet channeling his inner Antonio Brown. I'm going to rip the jersey off. I'm out of here. And Scotty Barnes is already gimping and limping. So their depth is even a little bit worse than it was before the start of this one. I don't see Thaddeus Young channeling his inner Larry Bird when the series goes back to Philadelphia and play the way that he did today. Nor do I see the 76ers starters playing as poorly as they did. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Hunter, and I'm going to say not only do the Sixers win Game 5, they steamroll this team. This game's over by halftime. I think they know what the task at hand is, and the Sixers haven't really played a complete game yet. I think they play one in Game 5.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an outrageous thought at all, and I love the word that you use, which is lethargic. Not that I'm enjoying the fact that that's how the Sixers played, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's easy, and sometimes we do that where it's the playoffs. How dare you come out that slow, and how do you play that awful when you know you could put the other team away, where you're up 3-0, when at some point human nature is involved, and you feel more comfortable knowing that you just won 3 games, and you had such an emotional high on that huge character win and that big-time iconic shot by Joel, where it's hard to match that. And when one team knows that this is life or death and the other team's like, hey, we got some time here, I don't love that that's the fact, but, I mean, human emotions play a role, and I think today the Sixers did come out lethargic, understanding the situation, and they got hit in the mouth a little bit, and they'll respond fine when we see them on Monday.
Yeah, like you said, this series to me reminds me a lot of the one they played against Washington last year, where it was obvious the Sixers were the better team. Embiid gets hurt. Everybody's freaking out. Look, I mean, again, I don't see our starters playing as poorly as they did today. And you get Thibault back. And anything that depletes the minutes that Danny Green gets is a win-win for me. How many open looks did that guy have today that he was clanging and banging off the rim? You know, again, like you said, Nick Nurse did what he had to do. The Sixers were in the game to start the fourth quarter. They had a shot. They could have easily lost both games in Toronto as they did win them. And like I said, they haven't played a complete game yet either. And I think it's coming. I think the can of ass whip is going to be open season come Monday night, and I think it's over.
I love it. Thanks, Sean. Good conversation for sure. I'll push back here a little bit on Sean, though, about Danny Green. Danny Green did not do well today, and he didn't do well in game one. But he was a crucial part of, and look, the last game, so game 3, he hit that major 3 after missing a couple layups right there underneath the basket. But I think Danny Green has actually been a bit of a positive here more than a negative. And I got you, sometimes you're going to miss wide open looks. But if you get those same exact looks on a different night and you drill them, and Doc Rivers kind of alluded to that a little bit as well, which he recognized that the team didn't play strong, and that hurts, and that was the number one issue. But some of the possessions, you did have good looks that just didn't fall, and on any other night, it can, and that could be the difference. And keep in mind, for as bad as the Sixers played, and they were terrible, it was right there. I mean, it was seriously right there to snag another one right from the Raptors. And, okay, so the Raptors did it, but realistically, you think about this over the 7 games, which is a way larger sample size, the Sixers will be just fine. I don't have a problem with Danny Green in this series logging as many minutes. In that overtime game, I can't believe it. He played 46 minutes. I mean, this guy's 91 years old, and you know how he runs, right? Everybody mocks his run. Here he is coming up and down the court. I got to give Danny Green a little bit more praise for what he's been doing, considering he's been a 15-minute guy, a 16-minute guy, a 12-minute guy when it comes to the regular season, and he was missing shots left and right. He wasn't reliable at all, to the point where Sixers fans were demanding and screaming at Doc to throw in Isaiah Joe. And then during a big playoff series, when one of your guys doesn't want to get vaccinated and doesn't feel like he's willing to be there for his team, with a very, very, very disappointing decision out of Matisse Thybulle, you know, he's definitely done a good job based off of those circumstances. So I do have to push back with you there, Sean, as a whole. I'm sorry. I just have to. And there were a couple games that were complete. I mean, game 1, game 2, they blew them out, where I think you're being a little unfair on the non-complete games, too. I wish I still had you on the air, Sean. I need to, let you know that there were some complete games in there as a whole. Where are we at here? Sixers and Raptors will meet again next year, says the chat. I don't care about next year. I don't care at all about next year. I'm focused on right now and where Joel Embiid is and where Maxey and Harden are. And, I expect a little bit more sharpness out of James Harden. I need him to be a little bit more bought into some of the catch and shoot options, which has been a hot topic. I need him to be a little bit more efficient as a whole. And I had him at 9.5 was the over under for assists. I had the over. He finished with 9, so that hurt me. When it comes to Joel Embiid assist, I hit the over. I took 2.5 over 2.5. He landed with 3, but I just thought Joel was sloppy with the passing, and I think it was something that the Toronto Raptors did to force him to make some of those passes. And I also think that, he was just feeling probably some pain with that hand and how much he was shaking it. And when he fell to the ground and he was looking for his teammates to help him, there were a lot of different times where you could see that, all right, it is definitely something that is causing him to grimace and causing him to feel it out and play with his thumb a little bit, because something was off, and it's going to be monitored, and we're going to get some more news on it when it comes to the MRI, but he's going to have to play through it because we need Joel Embiid, and I don't expect anything else other than the guy playing through it. I still saw some really important shots made when there were multiple defenders on him, so I feel it's capable even when he's not 100%. But this is the name of the game. And a lot of teams have their version of Joel Embiid's thumb. We just talked about Fred VanVleet. You look at Miami, Kyle Lowry. You look at Devin Booker. You look at Chris Middleton. This is the name of the game when you get to this point of the season. 856-442-9805. I would love to hear from you about this game and what you saw in the action. Let's see here. There are some open lines if you would like to chime in. It looks like Frank from EHT. Nope, doesn't look like it's here anymore. Frank from EHT was calling in. It's not coming up on my screen at this very moment, but there are open lines. When I go to the chat, I'm just taking a look on the tone here. All right, we got a lot of Raptors fans claiming that Philadelphia is the worst sports city on earth. I would have to disagree. We got Raptors fans saying Philly's not winning the championship. See, that's when you know that you are beat. It's similar to Nick Nurse, right? When Nick Nurse, after game one, is bitching and crying, I knew. You told me everything I needed to know, Nick. You don't have the answers. When you come into an opposing team's conversation and an opposing team's chat after game 4 and you're a Raptors fan and your thought is, well, the Sixers aren't going to win it anyway and they're going to lose. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's embarrassing and it's pathetic and it's a joke. So I'm supposed to be mad that the Sixers advance around? If they don't win the championship, and let's say they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm supposed to be disappointed and enjoying a journey because that's what sports fans are all about? Even if they do lose, but they haven't gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals in 20 years, I'm supposed to be devastated because some dope-ass moron who lives in Toronto told me that the Sixers aren't going to win a championship? Get the hell out of here. That's my thought on it. Get the hell out of here. You feel better about yourself? Am I concerned? This is from Dan. Am I concerned with Doc's ability to lose a 3-1 series in history? No. If the Sixers were to lose 4 straight games when they were up 3-0, I mean, that is so tragic, and that is so insane, and that is so intense that no, I am not worried about Doc Rivers blowing 3-1 series lead because, you're also factoring in that the series was 3-0, which matters because that adds to the numbers of now the other team has to win 4 straight. As much as he has a history of blowing a 3-1 series lead, what's the history tell you of a team winning 4 straight after being down 3-0? How about that history? We want to use analytics. We want to use numbers. What's the numbers tell you there? So sure, there is something to be said about Doc having that. At the same time, I don't know how you can possibly look at Toronto and say they have enough firepower as currently constructed to beat a 76ers team of this caliber. Now, if things go extremely south, and I don't even want to put this into the existence, but if things go extremely south to the point where people on the Sixers aren't available, well, that changes everything. But that's not even in my mind. That's not even in the back of my mind. I'm not even going down that path. That would change the equation big time and change the narrative massively. But even then, I would still feel fine about closing this thing out and just needing one more win. But the way that Embiid is, how determined he is this year, and how wired and how prepared and how his focus is night and day from previous Joel Embiid's, that does not cross my mind because Joel Embiid's a different type of beast. So no, I am not afraid of that. I am not afraid of that at all. Sixers only won game 1 and 2 because of the referees. It's one of these, huh? It's one of these. Or, how about this? Why don't I throw this out there? Because the Sixers fucked you over. They fucked you up. They destroyed you. How about that? You ever think that's why they won? Because they're fucking better than you. Just spitballing. Because they annihilated you. Because no one can stop Joel Embiid over a 7-game series on the Toronto Raptors. Because they don't match up well with the MVP of the league that's about to get screwed and not win the MVP, but the MVP of the league, who at 7'2", averaged the most points in the NBA. And by the way, when you look at field goals made, I hate to break it to you, in the postseason, Embiid's 4th in the NBA. So this stupid narrative from dumbass Raptors fans that claim that Embiid only scores because of the free throw. No. Go look at Kevin Durant. Go look at all these guys in the league and the percentage of points that they're scoring from from free throws made. Joel Embiid is like 4th on the list. So for all these crying and complaining, oh no, Joel Embiid. Oh, shut up. Did you see Pascal Siakam today, that fraud who got hit in the head? Oh, he's flipping back. I mean, it's just the name of the game. So to call out one guy and act as if he's such a joke and he's so brutal, come on, your players are doing the same damn thing. They just suck. They're not good enough to hang with the Sixers legitimately. They took a game, but they're not even close to the superstardom that Joel Embiid is. Let's go to Nolan in Hilltown, PA. What's up, Nolan?
What's up, bros? How you doing tonight?
I think I got a little too much caffeine and coffee rolling in my veins because I'm allowing idiots to piss me off.
Yeah, you gotta love those trolls. Anyway, first of all, I want to take back a couple shows ago what I said about me thinking that the Raptors can tie the series. I do think that realistically the Sixers can wrap the series up on Monday. So I'm just going to be short and sweet and say that.
Yeah, and I think you're right to believe that. And I think the being at home and everyone being on the support of the Sixers, knowing how that game 4 went, it got chippy, right? It got tough. It got hard-nosed. And there were players out there that really don't like one another. That's going to carry over to the Raptors now having to go into a hostile environment. It might have benefited them in game 4, but I think them utilizing that method is going to backfire when now they have to go into the Sixers building, and it's going to carry over, and you're going to go, oh, damn. Oh, damn. What did we do? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. The Sixers will definitely have the advantage on their side going into Game 5 on Monday in Philadelphia.
I agree with you, Nolan. And for anyone still going back to the free throw thing, it's ironic, right? Oh, the free throws is why we're losing. Oh, yeah? Say that to your squad who's missing free throws down the stretch. It's funny. You're missing your free throws, yet Embiid makes his. Right? You got your free throw attempts. Oh, how ironic. You got your free throw attempts. And you fucking missed them. Yet Embiid, yet Harden. They make theirs. So it's only a problem because the Sixers are actually good at doing it. It's not a problem when people foul Ben Simmons on purpose. And since I'm all riled up at this point, I have to bring up Ben Simmons. I just have to. This guy is such a clown, all right? He's such a... For him to feel, I'll be ready for game 4, which is just a couple days after game 3, right? This is how it goes. It's so methodical. It makes me want to throw up the way that he's handling things, him and Rich Paul, where if they go down 3-0 and then they play game 4, there's no pressure and the conversation's not as hostile and it's not as harsh because nobody's expecting the team to come back from 3-0. And it's just such a loser mentality. This guy, and I heard this perfectly from Michael Kay up in New York, and he was told once by a baseball player, when you tell someone that your back hurts, it won't show up. So you can do things on MRIs and you can get all sorts of tests. Just say you have a back injury. You'll get paid. You could sit there on the bench, and he's saying that, oh yeah, Kevin Durant, and I love talking to my teammates. I sit there and I just love speaking to my team, helping them out on the bench. Are you serious? You think anybody's taking advice from you? You think there's someone on your team who's sitting there going, oh yeah, Ben, I would love to hear your knowledge of the game. Please break it down for me so I can definitely absorb all of that fantastic information on your knowledge of basketball, you fraud. This guy's the biggest loser in sports outside of, domestic violence cases and things of that. That's in its own tier of disgusting and disturbing. But from a competitive level, when you look at athletes that just want to go out there and do everything. Seth Curry, he's always nicked up, but he's out there. Robert Williams is going to play before Ben Simmons plays, right? Those type of discussions is absolutely insane. It just doesn't even add up. And all they do is try and milk it and change the narrative and trying to find the perfect time to slot in there when he can play again. Nobody's going to want you unless you're in an organization like Sacramento where there's no fan base, no one cares, because if you have to show up to work where people actually care about their basketball team and their organization, they're going to expect and demand results and expect you to show up to do your job. But but you're running away and you're maneuvering around like a bitch. That's just reality of the situation. And I've never seen anything like it. And now the New York media is starting to catch on, and they're starting to freak out about how much of a disaster it is. And it's funny, at the time, this is the missing piece. This is the missing piece to a championship. No, it's not the missing piece to a championship, because he won't even be available for you. Now, I have the game going on next to me. It's the fourth quarter. It's 83-76 right now. Boston's up. So, obviously, at the time of this recording, we'll see how it all shapes up. But, man, I'll tell you what. The Ben Simmons story just keeps getting wilder and wilder. And I don't know if we'll ever see an athlete be this weak-minded about the game ever again. Will he even ever play with the Brooklyn Nets? I don't know. He's claiming it may happen soon. But I just feel that they're trying to keep his name in the media. And speaking of that, too, I don't know if I'm overthinking things here, and maybe I'm not now that we have a little bit more knowledge of the thumb. But I want to bring up to you the way that Ramona Shelburne reported the Joel Embiid story and the way that Shams reported the Joel Embiid story. So, Ramona Shelburne, what was this, 2 days ago? Let's see. 1 day ago, maybe? Days are all combined here. Yeah, 1 day ago. Ramona Shelburne. Philadelphia 76ers star Joel Embiid is experiencing pain and discomfort in his right thumb, but practiced today and expects to play in Game 4. So he's experiencing pain in his thumb. No big deal. You go to Shams, who's on Clutch Sports' payroll and clearly has an agenda against the 76ers, even though Tyrese Maxey is a Clutch Sports and Rich Paul member. There is a fear that the Philadelphia 76ers All-NBA star Joel Embiid has a torn ligament in his right thumb. So you got one guy saying there's a fear there's a torn ligament, and then you got Ramona Shelburne and Woj going with the story of he has pain and discomfort. There seems to be a different message and a different harshness to it. Now, at the end of the day, as we heard Doc Rivers speak to the media and him talk about how it's not good, right? It's obviously not a good situation to be in. Maybe Shams ends up being right where, I mean, there is obviously something going on here to the point where there's an MRI. So don't allow my own bias towards Shams being just as much of a fraud as Ben Simmons is. Don't allow that for you to read it differently, because we kind of do know that the results are leaning towards something pretty damn serious. I'm just bothered because of at that time, I think it was different and we didn't have the viewing of today's game, and we didn't have the media with Doc Rivers, so we didn't have that. But I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit. Maybe I'm letting my bias show, and I'd be openly admitting that that's the case. I have no problems with admitting that I hate Shams and hate everything that he reports, because, all these, not all of them, but majority of journalists these days and big name guys, I mean, Adam Schefter, when he says things about Deshaun Watson, he has to delete the tweet and that's because he's copying and pasting stuff from other people, and he's getting information from the agent, and he wants it worded a certain way. They're just puppets. All they do is try and create havoc, try and create spark, and they do it so they can keep their relationships with agents for other news down the line. It's all a joke. It really is. It's all pathetic the way it all happens behind the scenes. So I'm just very skeptical when certain people say certain things, even though at the end of the day, I guess we do understand that Joel Embiid does have some ligament issues that are real and are concerning. So for whatever it's worth. This is now the second time I'm being asked in the chat about my thoughts on 3-1 and Doc Rivers. You could focus on that. I'm focused on the fact that teams don't come back down 3-0. So you want to talk about, it's narratives, right? You could find any statistic, and you could find any number, and you could find anything to describe what your narrative is. That's just reality, right? If you want to, badly enough, you could find something to defend a point, defend a take. You want to look at Doc Rivers in 3-1? Okay. I want to look at the fact that no team comes back down 3-0. So I'll take that percentage. You take your percentage, and we'll see which one ends up working. We'll see which one ends up happening. That's all. That's all we have to do. Apparently, we have to be more disappointed in the thumb injury than we are, or at least than I am. Because Nick says, if you don't understand how a thumb affects how you play, you have never played basketball. I'm not downplaying how much it can hinder you. All I'm saying is, even through the pain today, I watched him make unbelievable shots. Now, I saw him play poorly, but I don't know if this is just, let's say he has no thumb problem. Let's say Joel Embiid was fine and his hand was perfect and they played game 4 and they lost and he didn't look very good. He didn't look very solid and the Sixers lost. Then in game 5, he played well. Well, was game 4 because there was a physical issue, or was it just a night where the shots weren't as electric, where the passing wasn't as sharp, where the energy in the building took over and the frustration from the referees bothered him and it took him out of sync and he didn't see the court very well that game for whatever reason, and the Raptors threw different looks his way, and all of that collectively forced Joel to maybe just look a tad bit off where we need him to be better. Was that physical, or was that just a night where he wasn't as smooth as he was in other outings? I don't know. Maybe the answer is the thumb is going to be the difference in reaching our ultimate goal or not. Maybe the answer is yes. I just don't know if one game is enough for me to say absolutely 1,000% put the mortgage down on it. It's a no-brainer lock that it is. It may limit him, but a limited Joel Embiid, just like every other player that's banged up, is going to have limitations. You saw it. Barnes limitations. You've seen it with other teams. I've already referenced them all. They have limitations. But if you're talking about an MVP caliber guy and the league leader in scoring and his limitations, well, maybe he can't give you 38, but he gives you 30. Is that the limitations on a good day where the shots are falling? Just throwing out some other options here. It's not as if there's only one option. There's multiple options. There's multiple options. First game, Embiid tried to take out 3 players, and he was proud of it. I don't know what you're even talking about. It's kind of crazy that it seems there's so many Raptors people in these chats, right? And thank you. I appreciate your time. But isn't there the Raptors fan club, if you want to go and start having fun and feeling good about your team? Doesn't it tell you something that you're here? Maybe you should reflect. Maybe you should dig deep. And it's okay to be here. But when you're here and you're talking the way that you are, it's like Nick Nurse bitching. It's desperation mode. You're doing this to make you feel better about yourself because you know that you are in desperation mode. You know that you're done. You know that you lost. So the only option at this point is to start trying to force others to feel as down and feel as sad as you are. And that's what you're trying. You're trying to bring others down to your level because you are significantly hurt from the fact that you expected your team to play better over 7 games. The Sixers mollywopped you early on. Then they snagged your soul in a 3rd game where Joel Embiid had an iconic moment. And now here you are. That's kind of where we're at. Just spitballing here. That's all. That's all I'm throwing out there. But anyway, those are my thoughts. We don't have to dive too much deeper into it. It really is self-explanatory. It's very hard to sweep a team. You look around the league right now. What is it? Is it Denver that might get swept? Is Denver the team? When you go to, by the end of this too, you might even be seeing Brooklyn. How ironic is that? You might see Brooklyn get swept. You got Memphis up 2-1 on Minnesota. Talk about a crazy 4th quarter the other night. You got the Bulls and the Bucks at 2-1. Miami and the Hawks at 2-1. The Celtics are probably going to end up going 3-0 by the end of this. The Jazz and the Mavericks are 2-2. And the Warriors and the Nuggets tomorrow at 3:30 play their game 4. So, it is what it is. The Pelicans, they snagged one. It happens. Close the door on Monday night. That's the name of the game. Close the door on Monday night. All right, everyone. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. Sixers will be just fine. I promise you that. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button as well. I greatly appreciate it. If you're looking to buy tickets to go to any game out there, you can utilize the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page for $20 off of your purchase. It's basically paying for your parking. It's paying for a free beer. It's a no-brainer. Get yourself to a game. And then lastly, on social media, TikTok specifically, but TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, at Broads Media. Make sure you are hitting the follow button there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.